Let's talk about the horror of suspense. Have you ever looked down a dark hallway and felt a sense of unease? Or maybe you heard about something on the news, such as the killer on the loose, and your paranoid mind starts to play with you? Or perhaps you found something mysterious and terrifying and you can't explain what is wrong with it. In a logical matter, that, my friends, is the atmosphere of the fourth mainline game of Metroid Fusion. A game that caused me as a young kid to fear the idea of being replaced by a doppelganger. This was originally not going to be my next project after my coverage of Pokemon Legends ZA and its prequel games, X and Y, but I am going to look you straight in the eyes and say, I cannot play more games with different versions right now. I desire a break from completely covering a game. I'd like to cleanse it by talking about a much shorter game. Plus, recently I rewatched Peacemaker Season 1 with my friends. I'm trying to get them into it, which successfully, in all due respect, I made a lot of my friends fans of Peacemaker, and now they can't wait to see what DC Studios puts out next. Well, let's go back to Peacemaker. What I'm about to cover does spoil key plot points of Peacemaker Season 1, so to be respectful, I'm going to put up the time so you can skip there and still engage with my video without being spoiled. As for those of you who do not care or have seen it, Peacemaker made me remember how terrifying of a scenario it is to be assimilated by an unknown bioorganism or completely replaced, whether it be the butterflies of Peacemaker who burrow into your brain completely and take over your body, or John Carpenter's The Thing that kills and replaces its victims with perfect hosts, until it can kill its next victim, of course, and assimilate them as well. This is a terrifying example of sci-fi horror, one that has haunted me since the very game when I read the implications about a hypothetical creature that does what I listed above, but on a much more terrifying and grandiose scale, to the point that any planet or space station they inhabit must be completely destroyed, as to prevent them from spreading and devouring life forms all across the cosmos. I present you the X-Parasite of Metroid Fusion. Now you may be wondering, but Chase, how is this game scary? It doesn't have gore or violence. Well, buckaroo, I have to answer back with, it doesn't need horror or extreme acts of violence to be unsettling. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. You are told about an apex predator being studied in a lab. Only when you go to check up on it, it's nothing but bones that have been recently picked clean, sitting at the bottom of its tank. So what killed it? Now I ask again, you are carrying a briefcase and you are unable to do much because you are in a state of weakness. Surgery stitches on your leg prevent you from being at full capabilities. Now let's drop an invincible enemy in the next room over, who, if they see you, they will try to kill you violently. Oh, and this invincible enemy is also you, but way better. And you hear its every footstep echoing as it searches and searches. Its only goal at that moment is to hunt you down. Now that we imagine that, was that scary? If you say no, by the way, you're a damn liar. But if you do say yes, then that is the magic of suspense and tension. Now that I introduce you to the atmosphere of the game, let me tell you about the story of Metroid Fusion. And before we do, I'd like for you guys to hear me out before we get on to the rest of this video. If you like what I do so far, please subscribe and ring the bell. Then comment below on what you like about the video. And if you don't, please dislike this video and comment why you didn't down below. Oh, and the engagement topic of the video, what is your favorite Metroid Fusion boss? For me, this is Nightmare because I like how disturbing the fight gets as it goes on. Plus, the heavy gravity effect on missiles is actually really cool. Oh, and he's foreshadowed early in the game, the setup for him is really good. I also like the tragic implications behind them in Metroid Other M, even though the game is other dog shit. Anyways, on to the story. It happened on a revisit to the planet SR388, the home planet of the Metroids. Samus was hired as a bodyguard to help escort a group of scientists who work with the BSL, Biological Science Laboratories, who I presume that these scientists are studying the new shifts within the ecosystem of SR388 after the extinction of the Metroids during the events of Metroid 2. That is until Samus did her job, killing a hostile organism, which quickly morphed into a suspicious yellow gelatinous creature. Samus then tries to take that down as well, but her weapons phase right through it, and it dives into Samus. Although nothing happens at first, seeing that Samus appeared fine at the moment, Samus and the research vessel leave the planet to return to the research station. That is when disaster strikes. The organism had multiplied within her, corrupting large parts of her power suit and shutting down her central nervous system. putting Samus into a coma state, and with Samus unresponsive, her ship drifted into a nearby asteroid belt, crashing into it. It is only due to her ship's safety precautions that her life is spared. Her ship automatically placed her inside of an escape pod and ejected her away from the asteroid belt. She was recovered and transported by the research team's vessel and transported to Galactic Federation HQ. Immediately taken in by the surgical team, the surgery being so dire that the surgical staff had to resort to drastic measures such as surgically removing large portions of her suit due to organic components of her suit having become too integrated with Samus's nervous system. The procedure dramatically alters her appearance, taking on a new sleek form, but there's still one problem. The organism within her, identified as an X, a parasitic organism that infiltrates its prey and begins to assimilate and devour, which it turns out they only had one predator, the bioweapon known as the Metroid. The only creature that can consume an X parasite, which unfortunately were all eliminated by Samus herself. Now the parasites have returned, resurfacing unchecked and spreading and multiplying across the planet. That is until one scientist had proposed a solution to save Samus. A DNA sample preserved from the deceased baby Metroid from Super Metroid and Metroid 2, the anti-X vaccine was prepared and injected into Samus. Without delay, the X within her perished very quickly, allowing her to be no longer harmed by further X infection, but picks up a nasty side effect: the Metroid's vulnerability to the cold. Reborn from a near-fatal incident, Samus has no time to recover from her ordeal. It is immediately sent back to the BSL to investigate the space station where specimens from the planet orbited and her affected power suit pieces resided. On the way there, she is briefed by her ship's AI, who she will name Adam in her private thoughts, who orders her to investigate an explosion that had resided within the quarantine bay aboard the space station. We go to investigate, finding the location in ruins, sear and scorch marks all over the locale. We proceed further, finding containers in worse and worse states until the final one, revealing a singular horned toad, the creature who could not possibly be the source of this. No, but there's something just as horrifying about it that matches the dread around it. Killing it reveals its true form, an X-parasite that we absorb. Verifying the truth of the space station situation, Samus is still immune to being affected by the X-parasites, which is a relief considering her situation at this very moment. Which, of course, that as far as we know, the entire main deck is infected by the X. Because of infected specimens brought back from the planet the station orbits, we can assume that all organic life in the main sector is no longer what it once was, tainted by a galactic scourge. It would be catastrophic to think about what organisms are aboard the space station that the X can infect and replicate. So we are sent to the operation deck to prevent this from happening while getting back to full power. Samus is sent to the operation deck, which houses a data room, which Samus can use to download missile data. Once we download these missiles, we break into the vents to investigate a disturbance with the main sector, crawling through the auxiliary vents to approach the gathering bioorganisms and learn of what is going on after electrical interference knocks out power to the elevators within the main deck, making it hard to go back down to investigate the disturbance. After entering what I presume to be a commons area, we eliminate a parasite who is blocking the door to the gathering of bioorganisms. Once dealt with, we see the X gathering and combining together. They form a member from a very familiar species once encountered on SR388, if you played Metroid 2, that is, back when the Metroids kept the ecosystem in balance. Arachnus. We defeat it with relative ease, only for it to return to its previous form, known as a Core X. These X have tough and spiky outer shells as an evolution to protect them, possibly from understanding that what Samus is after absorbing a few of their kind to adapt to her absorption capabilities, but like all shells, they can be cracked open. And within this Core X, we regain the ability to use Morph Ball. However, the ship's computer would receive an alert that the X are invading the station's breeding environment, starting with Sector 1, which is a faithful recreation of the planet down below. Before Samus is briefed on the issue any further, she is ordered to report to Sector 1's navigation room. Samus descends down the elevator shaft, which strangely, the camera does not follow her. The camera stays, and we are shown the culprit of this whole ordeal very soon. An orange-clad figure that is very familiar to all of us. It's just who inside is different. An X mimicking Samus herself. After it stares into the security camera, it advances further and blasts open the door into the main deck. We then return back to Samus's POV, and once we go back to her, we hear an explosion ring out above, and when we reach the bottom of the shaft, the elevator shuts off for now, making it impossible to return to the main deck. This is probably for the better, and so Samus pursues her mission. She is once again breached inside of Sector 1's navigation room. The ship's computer alerts us that the main elevator will be down for a while, believing an unknown and powerful saboteur and not human is hindering our progress. Then the ship resumes our mission. The X are hindering atmospheric stabilizers to turn Sector 1 into a preferable breeding ground for themselves, telling us just how capable the X are. The operation goes relatively smoothly as Samus recovers her charge beam from a very strange encounter, such as an X imitating a Chozo statue. This may have implications, but not very good ones. These statues that held power-ups are in fact what I think they are, and that they have organic matter inside of them, another creepy detail. After accomplishing the mission, Samus is told to go back to the hub and enter Sector 2, TROO, a tropical habitat. Due to this unknown saboteur, Samus reflects on the computer, wondering if she can trust it, much like her old CO Adam. We arrive in Sector 2, and Samus is finally clued in on the identity of the saboteur. The computer reveals it to be the X mimicking Samus. After what I assumed I found out about it from checking station security footage or data, the computer names it the SAS, and warns Samus that upon spotting it, she should run and hide as it's equipped with the best of Samus's old equipment, including her ice beam. It will not hesitate to use it on Samus, and knows just how to deal with those who have Metroid DNA. With this warning issued, the next objective is clear. Find the data room, download the bomb data issued by HQ. But first of all, find and unlock level 1 hatches to access the data room within the sector. Once the security room is found, Samus advances towards the data room and collects the bomb data within. This isn't as easy as it should be. We hear an explosion followed by strange footsteps, where we learn the door we came in from is now destroyed in a seemingly petrified state. Samus enters the vents with a new bomb feature and proceeds with the mission, now trying to find a way out of Sector 2 and back to the navigation room. However, on our way back, we come across a Cortex. It forms into a new but strange alien entity. A strange alien that seems to be lanky and capable of jumping good, capable of swallowing Samus whole and draining her suit's energy. After a long and arduous fight, the Cortex's barrier is broken and Samus recovers 2 abilities in 1, the Spring Ball and the High Jump abilities. Gaining 2 abilities in 1. Now that we have more abilities, we should be able to use these abilities to escape. Oh, another petrified door. But luckily, this part of the floor seems to be weak, and then we see the catch. Our first ever gameplay introduction to SAS encounters. Note this background. It's almost always present. We let it walk out of this strange room, and once the coast is clear, we go back to navigation where we find out that Sector 4, AQA, oddly enough, is the next to be invaded by the X-Parasites. Sector 4 is an aquatic environment, home to organisms that thrive in bodies of water, situational for the X-Parasites, but they thrive on consuming all that are unfortunate enough to come across them. An unfortunate side effect of unlocking Sector 1 security blue hatches. On our way there, we get another perspective into Samus' mind, reflecting on the SAX, wondering if it has reason, or if it's just her but heartless. Aware of its capabilities to threaten the universe as she knows it, let's return to this fact later when we learn more about the X. Samus is briefed on this situation in Sector 4. Massive damage has been caused, wires are exposed in bodies of water, electrifying them, and multiple specimens now hosted the parasite. We are told of a highly potential specimen known as Sirius, but I shall have to keep this fact in mind. It is highly capable of moving and attacking at ultra high speeds. A dangerous waterborne predator believed to be released by our saboteur. This creature often returns to its breeding tanks, its habitat among this derelict space station. With authorization, Samus is ordered to terminate the specimen to prevent it from invading other breeding habitats. We travel through this flight sector, conquering the hazards within. Only when we come across our target's home, we find something truly dreadful: its bones. The specimen has been picked clean, our first instance of the rug being pulled out from underneath us. We press on and enter a large aquatic room to find our true culprit, an X-puppeting the form Sirius once had. After this battle and cracking the barrier open, we consume the X within, and Samus' speed booster function is once again restored. Now, since the speed booster is restored, we, however, do not have the gravity suit. So, without the gravity suit, we have to lower the water level to use the speed booster to return back to the navigation. We debrief to the ship's computer, revealing the next task. HQ has sent new missile upgrade data, and the data room in the current sector is sealed behind a level 4 red lock. For context, this is the highest security level on the station. To avoid entering sensitive rooms, we are instead redirected to Sector 3 PYR. which houses creatures that usually inhabit volcanic and desert environments. A sector that has yet to be invaded by the X parasites yet. You must find the security room and lift the level 2 locks on green doors to access the data room within Sector 3, which we are warned about the aggressive species within this habitat and the ultra-heated rooms that are lethal to Samus as she is. There's a workaround being developed for her at HQ, but for now, the missile upgrade is what matters the most at the moment. The lock is found and disengaged, allowing further access to the station at a high cost. The X finally invade Sector 3 and rapidly infect all life forms within the sector. Upon our trip back to navigation, we find that after we acquire super missiles, the data room into the corridor is melted into a slag heap, and a giant hole is torn through the floor. Once we investigate both of these strange occurrences, the area begins to shake and we go back towards the data room, only to be ambushed by a rogue security robot bursting from the data room we were just inside of, now rendering it useless, and a brutal fight is engaged. With Samus coming out on top after damaging it to the point its organic components are revealed, it escapes with a powerful leap, creating a new exit to return back to the hub. With the release of the level 2 security locks, Sectors 5 and 6 are now open and are most likely invaded by the X as well. This poses an issue as Sector 5 is an Arctic sector. If you remember, the vaccine has altered Samus, making her susceptible to the cold. The workaround is still being developed, but this sector is considered fatal, and with all data rooms encountered by Samus having been destroyed, it is no doubt that the X are capable of strategy and critical thought. So Samus is sent to Sector 6, NOC, a habitat suitable for nocturnal creatures. Shortly after Samus leaves, the computer is contacted by a mysterious individual asking if Samus suspects a thing. The computer affirms that she doesn't and assures this unknown agent that it will continue to monitor Samus and her endeavors at the BSL. Samus reaches Sector 6 and is then directed to the data room to download this data for the Varia suit. There's just one catch. X from Sector 5 have invaded Sector 6, who has absorbed enough of their environments to change themselves to be extremely cold. This is dangerous because the Blue X will sacrifice themselves to stop Samus from stopping their takeover of the space station. Thankfully, these X are big enough and sacrifice their previous advantage and are now susceptible to conventional firearms, allowing for the possibility of stunning them. With some caution, we avoid everything and we come across a sturdy wall only breakable by means of power bomb. We also discover a vent we can slip into, thankfully just in time, as our pursuer, the SAX, enters the room. It walks forward menacingly, then curls up into its own morph ball, laying a power bomb to destroy the wall, along with most of the room. Cross over into the corridor below, we follow after carefully when the floor beneath us gives away, and just barely do we catch a ledge hanging just above the monstrosity below. Once the coast is clear, we drop down and advance to get the Varia suit data. That is what we would have done if not for the fact we find a Core X inside the data room, downloading the data sent by HQ. The Core X has stolen the upgrade, escaping from Samus's grasp into the next room. The data it absorbs cause the Core X to mutate and transform into a stronger core. Armored and surrounded by miniature copies of itself, once it's cracked open, we are once again back to its original form. We crack open that as well and obtain the data that belonged to Samus all along. Her suit transforms from blue and yellow to a yellow and pink scheme. We head back and report back to the computer to try and understand how a gelatinous organism was able to download data meant for Samus. What should be impossible is possible through these strange creatures. But most importantly, Samus has now overcome her weakness. Unable to be damaged by extreme temperatures, which means Blue X are no longer a threat as well. While still a threat, chances to escape a SAX encounter increase drastically with how Samus is now unable to be frozen. The computer theorizes ways around how to deal with it, such as a plasma beam being able to penetrate the SAX's armor to help destroy it. As for the previously discussed ice beam, the computer explicitly states that Samus's cellular makeup will outright reject this, and so a workaround is discovered: the ice missile. Storing cold energies inside of a missile rather than an ice beam makes for a good workaround to prevent the upgrade from backfiring on her. Funnily enough, this data is sent to Sector 5 ARC. Since this room is secured, we will have to find a way to open the level 3 security room to access the yellow hatches that block our progress. We acquire both goals with ease and begin to head back to the navigation room. That is, however, until an alarm goes off. An AI voice alerting the station to an emergency within Sector 3. To find out what the emergency is, we head back to the navigation room to understand this emergency, and we are told that the cooling system to the main boiler room is malfunctioning, and such a hazard can trigger the station's auto-destruct systems, causing the entire space station to explode. We assume this is the work of the SAX, as it's possibly the only X-Parasite to have the knowledge to hack into these system control files for the station's cooling systems. We rush to Sector 3. The issue is so dire that both navigation rooms and save rooms are now inaccessible until the emergency is over. After making our way to the boiler room, we see something very strange. A scientist is on the control panel tampering with the systems. We fire on it and it loses its human disguise to battle us as a Core X. Once we defeat it, we recover the wide beam, formerly known as the spacer beam, and re-enable the cooling systems. To learn what happened, we debrief and learn that these organisms can absorb the knowledge and memories of their prey, when in actuality this has horrible implications considering a form one of them is constantly wearing. The theory is put forth that despite being a self-preserving species, it saw the destruction of the space station and the X on board were destroying to take Samus with them. A very interesting mindset. At the end of the debrief, we detect life signs in the habitation deck, and theoretically this could be survivors and possibly need Samus's help. Samus returns back to main deck and investigate these signals. Once we navigate to the top of the habitation deck, and on the way we find a rogue Sub-Zero containment cell holding a certain corpse inside that we should all recognize very well. Unable to do anything with this, we travel onwards and discover the source of these signals. Very familiar creatures that Samus has now saved twice. A previous encounter from her adventure in Super Metroid, Adakora and its chick. And along with that is 3 Etacoons, creatures native to planet Zebes. These creatures previously taught Samus and the player to unleash hidden abilities within her arsenal. Their survival is assumed to be because they yield no useful advantages to the X. All human life is presumed to be deceased aboard the station. With no other choice, Samus returns back to the breeding environments. The computer knows that some X are evolving and are now developing exteriors resilient to our weapons. With no other choice, HQ sends data for power bombs to Sector 5, where we must return and retrieve them for the firepower potential. But if you remember, there's a weird shadow looming in this sector, strangely flying around the entrance. But keep this in mind later. Later on, once the data is acquired, we slip into the lower segments of the sector and something unexpected occurs. A familiar, dreadful sound is heard. The SAX is tracking us, and has since then followed us into a corner. It refuses to go away, absolutely sure that its prey is in that room. It patrols until we are forced to use power bombs to escape, blowing our cover and revealing our position, narrowly escaping the pursuit of this monstrous foe. After these events, we report to the computer and are told to return to the ship to discuss important and sensitive information. Well, we would, until the power goes out, causing the elevator to cease its function mid-usage. We are forced into the events and crawl through the systems when we stumble into that Sub-Zero cryo storage from before, where the corpse of a very familiar foe's eyes glow, and soon the body gives way and collapses into an unrecognizable pile of frozen biomatter, an X flying away as it consumed the frozen corpse within. We proceed into the floor under this and return to our ship. The main reactor has gone offline, all hatches and elevators are powered off, and we will need to infiltrate the silo through unconventional means to turn the power back on. After this, we learn why the computer calls us and that the creatures we previously rescued have boarded the ship now and are currently taking refuge. The computer promises to keep them safe. We return to the ducts and make our way to the main silo, in which strange vegetation has grown onto the reactors, causing all parts to stop and strangely discard cocoons all over the reactor itself. We explore further inside of the reactor rooms, in which we come across a strange spider-like creature. And I shit you not, by the way, this thing is called Yakuza. I am unsure why, but that is my interesting fact for this segment. So after we destroy it, we regain the space jump ability, using our ability to journey into the upper echelons of the reactor and investigate what seems to be the strongest parts of the vegetation growth, grabbing the ledges of the vent and morph balling our way inside. Well, it'd be that simple if it wasn't for those familiar footsteps beneath us in that sinister ambience. Below us is our doppelganger, stalking and searching around for us, and the only way around it and get to the source of the station shut down in Sector 2 is forward. We barely escape it, crawling into a hiding place. Unfortunately, our pursuer doesn't check our hiding spot and leaves. A risky engagement, but not our last engagement with our doppelganger. We go further into Sector 2, falling to a strange room overrun with plants and a weird Chozo statue entangled in vines. Surrounded by man-eating plants, the source of the vines that stall the reactor is before us. The battle goes on and we see the statue break open, allowing plasma beams to emit from the statue's shell. And just like all X-hosts, the shell crumbles and the core X is revealed to be cracked open and absorbed, restoring Samus's plasma beam. With the reactor's power restored to the entire station, we go back to report the event as the computer is told about the recovery of the plasma beam functionality, a most intriguing restored functionality that is until we are told about an explosion in Sector 5's data room. The cause is a creature named Nightmare, a biomechanical weapon that can manipulate gravity. It has caused untold damage to Sector 5, a powerful tool in the hands of the X-Parasite. Samus is ordered to destroy it before it wreaks further havoc upon the entire space station. Its potential is seen from what we presume to be the aftermath of its latest rampage. Metal twisted, hatches torn open, and shards of glass strewn all across the entire sector. After trudging through the wreckage and water in the sector, we come across a strange room filled with a mound of junk. We see the culprit of destruction rising from the ground. It's so strange how it does so as well. But the fight engages, we damage the creature's tail to the point it activates, turning up the gravity in the room, making it harder to destroy, and its mask is leaking a strange green goo. But once the gravity generator is destroyed, its mask is blown off, revealing its true face, and it is melting. The face gets worse as the fight rages on, until its arms are finally blown off and it falls to the floor. Reverting to its core X form, we smash it open and recover the gravity suit. Not too long until the suit's functions are completely restored to the purple and teal suit. Now, due to the destruction of Sector 5, we are forced to find other means to get back. So we use our gravity suit and speed booster in conjunction to bash through a wall and speed boost directly into Sector 4, to what I assume to be environments meant to recreate an oceanic biome for aquatic life that had once thrived in here. After navigating maze-like environments in what feels like a bit, we stumble into the level 4 security room and unlock all red hatches throughout the station. And then we backtrack back to earlier red hatches in Sector 4, come across the data room within said sector, accessing the diffusion upgrade, the final piece of the puzzle so we can escape from Sector 4 after our detour from Nightmare. We find this strange as the computer tells us that HQ did not tell us about a upgrade waiting for us. The computer scolds our discretion in bypassing security, but changes the subject to talk about the security robot from Sector 3. It has since then barged into Sector 6 after the X have infected its organic components. Remembering the exposed brain from our last encounter with this strange rogue machine, once we arrive, we are alerted that we are to eliminate the machine and leave immediately. The SAX is tracking us, and we should do our best to leave as soon as possible. In our hunt, we stumble across a strange facility, a facility inside of a strange facility, strangely enough. This restricted area is inaccessible to us with a warning to keep out. With no choice, and suddenly, we turn back after hearing an explosion to find the box robot damaged from our last battle inside of a flooded cave. Its exposed circuitry electrifying the water, causing us to have to think outside the box and mold the arena back into our favor. We fight the robot, destroying its shell and using our missiles to crack the glass shell, protecting the brain housed within the shell of box. Destroying the core X after our victory, restoring wave beam functionality. Now with increased utility, instead of backtracking, we dive into the restricted sector to throw off the SAX as an attempt to escape its hunt. Well, we find something we should not have as we go deeper into this restricted laboratory: infant Metroids. And further in, we see Metroids in various stages of their life cycles in vats presumably to be studied. Mature, Alpha, Gamma, Zeta, more test tubes in the background presumably filled with even more specimens. When we come across another hutch of infant Metroids, that is when suddenly a large explosion, followed by many more explosions, we go back down to find that the SAX has followed us and is now trying to wreck the lab and attempting to kill all the Metroids inside. That is until it is inevitably swarmed by infant Metroids and overtaken. The lab's protocols go off, and Samus has to escape from the restricted lab before it detonates, lest she go down with the restricted lab itself. She narrowly escapes, the lab detaches and drifts off into space, exploding violently to prevent its subjects from getting out of hand. Once back on board the BSL station, Samus reports to the first navigation room she finds, The computer, however, is all too aware of what she's done and warns that she will have to pay for her actions that she has disobeyed her orders. The computer reveals what we discovered, a program to breed Metroids for peaceful applications, and elaborates further by telling us that Sector 1 is an ideal recreation of planet SR388's ecosystem, perfect for raising Metroids safely in their ideal environment. In fact, too well to the point that they can grow a larval Metroid to an Omega Metroid within minutes, mostly through the techniques they have found while researching these bioweapons. But of course, as the computer said, the X has smelled out its natural enemy. The computer warns that there's another SAX on the way, as these parasites are revealed to have the capability to reproduce asexually. With that revelation, there's potentially 10 or more SAXs aboard the station. The computer tells her that she must report to HQ as soon as possible, and on the way up the elevator, Samus reflects how the real Adam would have reacted to this event, and on our way through in what I presume to be maintenance tunnels to an alternate entrance to the restricted labs, I believe, we see a very strange sight at the bottom of the shaft. The mummified corpse of Samus's rival Ridley. It's only when we approach does its eyes glow red once more, and for whatever reason, the parasite puppeting this long-time enemy of Samus thought that Ridley's natural body wasn't efficient enough or intimidating, so it modifies it into Neo Ridley. With a much more sinister head, stronger arms, sharper beak, it battles us. But after unloading so many missiles, we destroy Ridley once and for all, ensuring his final death. We recover the screw attack and use it to penetrate back into Sector 1. But there's something notably different about Sector 1. These discarded membranes are found in various locations. Surely nothing has a membrane similar to this, right? After enough backtracking, we stop in Sector 1's navigation room to make a report, in which the computer tells us that we are done here. We are leaving, the Federation will handle it from here on out. Samus, however, thinks this is foolish and interjects, asking if the machine is joking, believing that this is a fool's errand with how dangerous these X-Parasites are. The Federation's short-sightedness is to underestimate what these creatures are capable of, so much so, if they infect the wrong host, their adaptability will allow them to take over the stars with ease. The Federation's delusions lead them to send people who are not immune to the X infection to their deaths, because they think they can take on an X who is mimicking the most powerful bounty hunter in the galaxy. The Federation even started to sabotage Samus's progress earlier within the game by withholding upgrades like their completed plasma beam modification, but Samus managed to restore that on her own, with no help needed whatsoever, as well as obtaining the diffusion missiles, which are sent as a mistake, but that was too late to prevent as well. Samus pleads for them to withhold the mission, but then the computer closes the line. Samus theorizes what would happen, how they will overwhelm the Federation as soon as they land on the BSL. She then plots to explode the space station, even if she has to go down with it. Samus, after formulating her plan, demands the computer to open the hatch so she can destroy the space station. That is, however, not possible, as the Galactic Federation's higher-ups have ordered the computer to confine Samus until they arrive. Samus tries to reason and calls the computer Adam by a complete mistake. The computer questions this and asks what would he do. Samus tells how he would go about this dilemma, that he would understand that the mission is above all, as he had made that very same sacrifice and gave his life for Samus. The computer, however, says foolishness. Before Samus could further reprehend the disrespect, the computer corrects Samus's plan harshly by calling her foolish, including the planet in the station's vaporization field to guarantee the eradication of the X on board and on the planet below. It is through these words that the computer begins to act even more like Adam, finishing the debris of what he usually says when he was still alive. Any objections, lady? With hopeful music, Samus embarks to the observation deck to engage the station's thrusters with the planet. Taking the elevator to the operations decks, our progress is halted one last time by an all too familiar Pursuer's explosion. A SAX had followed Samus into the operations for one last showdown, and the battle rages on and Samus gets an upper hand. The SAX kneels and mutates into a monstrous form, comprised of all of its previous hosts, and even when that goes down, it transforms into a Core X form, but when we defeat it finally, it's not stunned like the other Core X's, and it makes its escape for now. With Samus now able to activate the propulsion system and send the station crashing into the planet below, it's time for an escape and return to our ship. But when we finally get back to the hangar, we find that it is extremely damaged and a discarded membrane is on the ground. An explosion emerges from the right, and an Omega Metroid bursts forward to attack. Its claws strike powerful enough to cripple Samus. It goes in for the finishing blow when the SAX's gelatinous form floats back in and reforms to fight the Omega Metroid. But it is also defeated in one hit. Samus absorbs the X-Parasite and regains her suit's original colors and Ice Beam functionality. Allowing for a swift defeat of the Omega Metroid, the ship comes back just in the nick of time, and they all escape the destruction of both the BSL and the planet SR-388 for good. Samus reflects upon the wisdom of her former CEO, Adam, and the realization that the wisdom of the Federation's greatest minds are frequently uploaded so that they may serve even after death. This incredible reunion saving the universe as it is. The computer didn't ask what chose Samus, only to reveal that the reason that the ship could take off was due to the passengers she stowed away on her ship and Adam's commands. The credits roll and the story resumes in Metroid Dread. So something that has icked me about my own videos is that I'm going to be honest, I do not talk about the stories and how I feel about them and like the games I cover. And even if I do it somewhat, it's not enough. So I wish to change this in this video. I want to talk about the story of Fusion, and while its ramifications are not entirely clear at the moment, is something that should be quite talked about. The shadiness of the Galactic Federation, clearly they are not breeding these bioweapons, aka the Metroids, for peaceful applications. You could say breeding the existential predator back into the ecosystem would be nice, but think about the Metroid's later life stages, especially the Omega forms. Let's be for real, what peaceful applications could a dangerous monster such as an Omega Metroid bring? Clearly these are bioweapons through and through. Like, be for real, you are not, I don't even know what you could even suggest that you could use these for, because like in other M, they literally shut off the ability for them to be frozen. A very foolish mistake, may I add. While it's not clear what will come next after this in Dread, I think that we can best assume that a inevitable confrontation with the Federation is coming, especially with how Samus has thwarted them twice in relation to their plans around Metroids. First being on Metroid Other M's battleship. Yes, Other M is still canon, even if it's terrible. The proof is in Metroid Dread. And secondly here, where oddly, Samus has jettisoned Metroid laboratories out into space to explode twice. So I will propose a theory. In the next Metroid game, we are probably going to experience the result of the Federation's plans being foiled. While the E.M.M.Is, as they are quote-unquote designed for harsh environments with nearly indestructible materials compromising its body, we can assume that these were made with the intent to eventually target and extract a DNA sample from Samus to potentially recreate Metroids once again. Considering their past exploits, I would not be surprised if the bounty for Dread's mission being low was a side effect of them being spiteful to Samus, as she is the only bounty hunter in the universe who can possibly eradicate the X-Parasites so efficiently. Not to mention they plan to capture the SAX because of its applications, most likely as another bioweapon, and think about it, if a perfect copy of one of your most valuable bounty hunters surfaced and you think you can make it loyal, you would take it. If you're thinking the way of secret shadow organization cabals do when they take over a government, then yeah. This is my thought process when analyzing the last story beats of Fusion, especially since they try to cripple Samus in her road to recovery and prevent her from going back to her full capabilities or becoming stronger than the SAX. Because they know damn well she would eliminate the soulless monster through any means necessary. As for our soulless enemies, I think the X make a fantastic new antagonist. And while most games in Metroid are space pirate related, because let's be honest, that's just who the starting antagonists were, this game tells me that they are not afraid to move on from the space pirates as time goes on. Not counting the Metroid Prime games, as those games are typically very early in the series timeline and are very much super duper canon. That's more so just a reasonable conclusion, I think, as the timeline goes on. The space pirates are eventually just going to die out, as all organizations that lose their leaders do. Considering that literally every leader is dead or will eventually die, I high-key respect Metroid's willingness to bring in new iconic villains. Every Metroid fan will remember the SAX and Ravenbeak, which is, I think, is very important to bring in new protagonists, because outside of Metroid Prime in the second remake, really as it only appeared for 2 games, and when you factor in these 2 games, it's only 3 appearances from Metroid 2 Samus Returns, Metroid Prime 3, which is 3 more compared to his 2 more appearances. I don't really count Neo Ridley or Clone Ridley because, if I may, I don't really feel like that's truly the same character at that point, much like how Dark Samus and the SAX are not Samus despite looking like her and are operating in stolen armors. Well, that's just my opinion. And honestly, I do believe that the series works better when it does introduce new villains, because it is honestly weird for Ridley to just swing back in after getting utterly decimated by Samus. Like, how did he come back from this? Also, in regards to Metroid Prime 4, shush, I am still playing that. Do not tell me if Ridley's in it. I would very much like to experience the game I waited decades for. Please do not attempt to spoil me on its story. I slowly work through it. I be working sometimes. Now, back to the actual story. This was, I believe, the first game to introduce Adam to us and provide a more linear experience as we deal with the X-Menace. I think the crumbs that we are laid to help establish Adam so that we, the player, and Samus can build an understanding towards AI Adam. Learning about bits and pieces of who he was throughout the story, which I think makes the final reveal that he's the AI all the more sweeter. When he goes from detaining Samus to helping her and giving her advice to help destroy the planet of SR388, along with the BSL, it's cool how much dialogue it helps enhance the story of Metroid. I also think it makes the moments where Samus speaks mean so much more narratively and thematically. I also just like to talk about the characterization of Samus. This game's story makes me think about how much better the series would genuinely be without the inclusion of Other M, because I honestly think it makes the series story worse around this part of the timeline. Like, Other M is honestly just a net negative. I'll talk about this in later. I don't like being too negative in the video I'm being positive about. Anyways, back to my topic. Because in my opinion, I think there's only so much an organization can blunder before it gets ridiculous. Like, when you think about it, Other M somehow made worse fusion. Like, it's literally just a worse fusion in every way. They made Samus's thought processes worse, you know, like the cutscenes where she's like thinking to herself and just like reacting to the story and how it unfolds. And like, it's just so bad to the point where it genuinely doesn't offer any interesting perspectives compared to her time in the elevators, which are shorter and takes less time to tell us how she's thinking. It ruins it for me, if I can be completely honest. Like, here's one take of mine. Like, I think having nightmares show up in Other M is dumb. Like, I know early in the video I said I kind of liked when he showed up in Other M, because, like, there's some implications you can do. But I'll be honest, I just think having him show up in Other M is just dumb. I don't know. I guess, like, it's mostly because it feels much better if Samus discovers it in Fusion with us, because it's a top secret bioweapon project. I don't think she would likely run into the same thing twice. Like, I know it's not him in Fusion because, like, he got taken over, but still, it's just, we are introduced to it in Fusion like it's something brand new. But then we find out that in the prequel, she decimated it. I also just think it's more so that you can only cover up the same secrets from the same person once, but then showing up to thwart a similar plot is ridiculous. It's literally, if I had a nickel for every detachable Metroid lab that self-destructed when one Metroid got loose,
But I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
now I'm going to be for real back to positivity. Another thing I like mentioning is the versatility of the X as antagonists. They are such a terrifying enemy to the point that, aside from presentation, they are far too dangerous to keep around. With how the only efficient way to get rid of them is usually by exploding the planet they infest, with how they can adapt to whatever environment they are introduced to. My examples being the 6 different breeding habitats on the BSL space station and planet ZDR. Not to mention breaking down creatures into biomatter sludge with how they did to humans in the Chozo. And if they feel like it, pilot this biomatter to form a zombie-like organism that shambles forth in an attempt to attack whoever comes across them. This is by nature disturbing, as no other creature literally does this in nature, or anything close to it, in fact. The X are terrifying because if they get a hold of the right creature, they can learn how to pilot a ship and fly to other planets. Oh, by the way, they do this thing I mentioned twice in Dread Alone. Once before the game begins, and presumably again during the destruction of ZDR. So let's see what planet they infect next and how Samus will have to deal with the X on that planet. There's a reason why Samus explicitly says that these creatures are a threat to the universe itself. They are far too efficient at spreading and reproducing as an invasive species to the point that they can easily replace a planet's entire population within hours. But I think, however, it is time to talk about a feeling of dread that this game can build up on you through several different points of the story. Metroid has always been about incurring dread into you, despite its ability to morph into an utter power fantasy near the end of the games. But I guess that just comes with the territory of being based on a famous sci-fi horror series. But in recent memories, I think this, Echoes, and Dread are the closest we can get to the survival horror genre. And that can be attributed to this very game being the start of these trends, taking it a step further. What I am talking about, of course, is the first ever pursuer enemy in the Metroid franchise, the SAX. I think we can more so compare it to PS1 Mr. X because calling it a true pursuer enemy like Nemesis would not be correct in the slightest. And while it's not very smart in its AI, I can at least assure you that the very first playthrough for this was scary as hell. One example, when you're hiding from it and you hear this dramatic theme that tugs on your heart and amidst that theme, it feels like your very heart is beating as you wait for this monstrosity to walk by. And you get into a few close calls, such as wandering into a room with a familiar background, trying to blow up a wall when you notice a strange icon appears on the tile blocks, kind of like you need power bombs, huh? Then you hear an arm cannon fire, followed by footsteps. You have to hide quick or risk being spotted by a heartless killing machine. Then you see it turn into its own morph ball, and it uses its power bombs to tear through a wall after you could not, almost getting revealed in the process as the blast damages you through the floor. Luckily, not all the room is susceptible to this powerful weapon, and if you're foolish enough to leave early, well, the floor collapses underneath you, and if you're quick enough, you can catch the ledge to avoid being discovered. Like, this scene can be really tense. I think the best way to describe it is this unstoppable monster who can discover you if you're not careful. And might I remind you, it is hunting you down while you try to achieve your goal of getting powered up to put a stop to the ongoing events of the space station. Normally, this would not feel as tense in a Metroid game, but it's different as not only are there things more powerful out there in the station, it's more unnerving this time because you're told that a monster is searching for you so that it can put an end to you. Especially when it spots you and it starts playing this demented circus theme, and I'm pretty sure the game stops for a brief moment when it does spot you. Whenever this happened to me when I was younger, I feel what felt like a brick getting dropped in my stomach before this alien started to hunt me down. Other occasions of a feeling of dread is, I think, when they first have you check up on Sirius. They have its boss marker here on the map, but when you go there, we see nothing but bones left, which, if I recall, was a dangerous predator that was infected, devoured, and then copied. When an apex predator of its biome is dismantled very easily by an invading organism, that helps establish dread, does it not? And then we also see the silhouette of Nightmare flying around in Sector 5. This isn't as dread-inducing as anything else, but the monster floating around frantically is a bit sinister, isn't it? Not to mention that you see its destruction later on when you come back, because this tells us that the X has gotten a hold of this bioweapon, not to mention this strange creature's faceplate just starts to ooze a strange liquid during the boss fight as it goes on. Its faceplate falls off. When it starts to ooze some more, slowly it melts, as its bioengineered body slowly melts. I guess what the X cannot do is fix its faulty DNA from what I assume is a bioweapon that is in development. Now let me clarify why I assume this, as it's not stated anywhere. I just like looking at mysterious things that intrigue me, like Nightmare, and try to come up with ideas on why this thing intrigues me the way they do, while also coming up with ideas on why they look the way they do. Now let's skip further into the game, past a few SAX counters that require you to think on your feet, into one of the final counters where Samus has to escape into a restricted sector to escape from an incoming SAX that was hunting you down. So Samus stumbles to a restricted lab which is filled with various Metroids in various stages of their life cycle. This revelation that the Federation has been breeding in secret, which is apparently not the only time they've been doing this type of thing. If we recall a prequel that would eventually land on the Wii. A really fuck-ass prequel, by the way. Anyways, I think we can assume the true nature of BSL is a very deadly one, considering the type of creatures that they keep on board the space station. We can assume that this is in fact a research station that develops bioweapons on the side, considering previous examples like Nightmare, Ridley's Frozen Corpse, the study of Sirius. We can assume that these were all set up for terrible deeds, by the way. The Federation had plans to foolishly attempt to control the X by sending a team to capture them, considering that they should know that there's no conventional way to capture them. Let's add on to this by remembering the one parasite that consumed a scientist and gained his memories, so they can cause a boiler meltdown and destroy the space station in an act to kill Samus, a hyper dangerous threat to its species. And at the climax of the game, when we go to destroy it, We fight the SAX, eventually pushing it to desperation to mutate its form in a mix of DNA of its previous host to create a monstrosity. I really adore how this game started the series down a creepy path because they do this exact stuff in its sequel Dread, and they recapture the feelings of Dread in certain in-game events. I won't speak on this at the moment, but I will leave a few teasers on the screen. This is very strange to open up with, but I'm gonna be so honest with you. Thank God you can grab glitches in this game. This was such an awful thing to go without when you just casually replay the Metroid games. In Super Metroid, I got stuck in a pit of sand because I could barely reach the ledge and nothing more. It was actually so painful. This is such a simple but incredibly welcome feature. Oh my God, it's such an improvement. But let's get it straight. This is probably the most linear Metroid game as far as I can remember. Maybe even more so than Dread as well. Despite this game having the fuck-ass pillar that helps you out of a escapable pit if you bomb this one specific spot. But another big change is the change from Ice Beam to Ice Missiles. I think this is kind of worse in terms of having an option to go from damaging weaponry to weapon that can stun. But I can understand the attempt as the game practically only had two face buttons, a start and select button, and two shoulder buttons to work with. It's kind of a no-brainer that they want to cut down on weapon cycling like how it was in Super Metroid, since you have to rotate from default to 5 different items. It was kind of tedious if I'm going to be very honest with you. Speaking of good fixes from Super, Shine Spark no longer drains your health once you use it. Felt it was punishing for no reason. While the game is easier, I do kind of miss reserve tanks as it was a nice little backup, but the solution to this is simple. Get good. Which is something I often say to myself, like, I'm not trying to be elitist. Just look at this clip of me being a dumbass and jumping into Yakuza's loving, embraceful arms like the dummy I am. I think it's also interesting to replenish your reserves of health and ammo in this game. Rather than being a floating icon like in the older games, now your healing and ammo rewards fly away from you, which is funny because I am currently picturing a health pack growing wings and flying off. Except sometimes your health pack can just transform back to a different monster. By the way, for a 2002 game, this is a really cool feature. You have a game entity that's just coded to the point that once it reaches a certain title or distance away from the player, that this vulnerable entity, if given enough time, can shapeshift into another enemy, once again becoming an obstacle to the player. And speaking of shapeshifters, I would like to talk about the SAX's AI next. While it can be efficient in chasing the players, it has its cheesable moments, and it's heavily scripted when it does appear, unlike its successor in the next game, the E.M.M.I. Which I would like to revisit this point near the end of the video. Put this down and file it in your little mind filing cabinets for later. Until then, I'm going to move on to my next subject. I love the art direction of this game. From the box art to the promotional material, I think this game does a good job shaking up the design standards, with them changing Samus's default suit and ship, so I'm going to break it down piece by piece. I love the fusion suit, and to this day, I wish we could have it as a true alternate costume to Samus in Smash one day. Like, it's a suit made of pure genius design. The arm blades, the back booster harkening back to a Metroid's nucleus, the blue and yellow colors work very well to complement its sleek design. Also, that blue crown-shaped visor, chef's kiss. I also really like the artistic rendition of the suit in the flashback cutscene in Dread, because it adds on to what the suit is supposed to represent, and that is what the power suit would look like after removing its metallic exterior, since the suit is bioorganic after all. It's kind of like when a patient has to have some of their skin removed due to medicinal reasons that may impact the health of the patient. I also dig the suit when it's purple and blue and it's classic yellow and orange, but I will say that the yellow and pink is kind of yucky looking. They did not cook with that color scheme at all in this Varia suit. Also, fun fact, the suit does return in other games. In Metroid Prime and Samus Returns, although with slight artistic renditions, due to how base game Samus is designed in Prime, the colors are retained for each rendition, except for how the grapple beam is designed in Prime to be mounted along Samus's forearm. The spikes unfortunately have to go due to game design. The only issue I've noticed is a minor gripe to me is that the Phazon suit and Death Steel Mega Suit in the 3D without the green visor, but rather the Fusion Suit's original blue visor, which is very strange to me, and I will chalk this up as a very minor mistake that is not worth my concern. Now let's talk about Samus Returns Fusion Suit. So, One thing you'll notice is that the main color of the suit's texture has a more muscle fiber design, as they've always seemed to have intended. But another thing I've noticed that the shoulders are more bulky. Maybe this is because of the base model's design, perhaps. I am not an expert at modeling, and I'll never claim to be, but I assume some liberties were taken to cut corners for an optional Easter egg mode for a remake. Considering how linked Metroid 2 and 4 are, but I think it's time to address the watermelon-colored elephant in the room, the redesigned Varia suit. I have no idea why they turned the colors green and pink, but at least it doesn't remind me of Barf this time. It's a bit weird to randomly do this, but I'm kind of okay with this. Another observation about the fusion suit in Samus Returns fusion suit is the redesigned morph ball. Rather than being entirely smooth, the Samus Returns morph ball now features an inner ring with a glowing blue light. I believe this is because of Samus Returns using the spider ball, and it may look like this because of that. Now for the ship. Usually the gunship Samus uses is modeled after her armor and more specifically her helmet, but Future asks for a cylinder purple gunship. By the way, this is a script correction before I get corrected. They just call it the Starship. It trades a compact yellow design for a slender purple hull. I was unsure how to interpret this ship at first until I remember that it's in Dread. A very short period, but regardless, it is. The cockpit is longer. I can see how it has a middle landing leg to help with its balance while it's landed. I think its purple body complements it very nicely, and luckily still works for Samus no matter what. Yeah, she did start the game wearing orange. A very silly point I do realize, but I love when vehicles match their driver in some way. But of course, how can I talk about Metroid without talking about the key in the arts for beating the games at certain percentages, or at what time you beat the game at? So let's rapid fire. Here's my ending, resulting at 50% completion in 3 hours. Here's what I assume is under shorter times than I did. In the apparent hard mode of the game shows you Samus in her casual wear bikini. But here's the kicker. These exclusive stills are from the Japanese exclusive kids and adult mode. So these are the stills from the kids mode, showing us various glimpses of Samus' childhood, including the raid on her homeworld when she was just a toddler, resulting in the deaths of her biological mom and dad, to her training amongst the Chozo so she could thrive in their world just like them. I also greatly enjoy the stills they use for the in-game cutscenes to give us a closer look at stuff we would normally miss, like how for some reason Samus' visor is still green despite being blue in the box art and elevator scenes and this cutscene at the end. The sprite work is also great, seeing as they do great work showing off different aspects of a derelict space station, like pristine corners to wires being ripped out of the walls to very extreme parts of destruction, like such as the destruction of Sector 5 and the quarantine bay's level of damage, where you can see the more extreme area being at the center of the blast and less damage the further you get from the blast zone's origin. I like the sprite work a lot in this game. I just often can't believe that this game is using the same exact core engine as Wario Land 4. We can see this from the post here with Metroid Fusion's debug mode using blocks from Wario Land 4, either using Wario Land 4 as a basis or just as the engine itself, which either way you put it is very intriguing to me. The music to Metroid Fusion is very atmospheric, setting the mood in various ways with amazing sounds. I think before we talk about them, I'd like to sample the OST with you all, so you all have insight on what I'm about to talk about. So now that we've covered some of the tracks I'm about to dive into, let's go over each one by one. Like with the hopeful start to solving issues in Sector 1, that despite the dire situation that's going on with the BSL, you are ready to take on the X and exterminate them. Now let's shift along to the very dread that crawls along your spine once something hits the fan and you find yourself in a SAX encounter, the heartbeat pounding in your head as you hide from it, praying that it doesn't find you at all, as the atmosphere is filled with an incredibly tense aura. Or my favorite example, the SAX's disturbing clown music when it decides to hunt you down for sport, for daring the hard counter its miserable existence. A perfect copy of of what you once were before the infection. Now your own worst enemy as you had to surpass your past superior self. Try saying that multiple times. Or that disturbing alert you hear at the end of Sector 5 when the boiler starts to go critical, to the point of taking out the entire space station. By reaching a critical point to the moment it would trigger its self-destruct feature because shit has hit the fan. I think these sounds make me feel on edge, but there's just so many good sounds I can pull from in this game. It's just, there's so much variety in such a short game. It's amazing, legitimately. I think the first Easter egg reference I can think about is the game shares its key plot point with Alien Resurrection with slight differences rather than just being a clone like Ripley 8. This is the original Samus who was cured of her infection from the X parasite due to the Metroid vaccine, causing her to be part Metroid much like how Ripley 8 is part Xenomorph. I think this is a really fun reference to make even if Alien Resurrection is not at all a good movie. It's just cool to see Metroid make callbacks, homages, and references to the franchise that helped create it all. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I think we can all understand the X are very much a reference or inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing, especially with how often the X take the DNA they absorbed and mix it up to make superior hybrids for improved killing machines. Kind of similar to what the Alien in The Thing would do if I remember correctly, but without the horror factor. But as much as I like to talk about old sci-fi horror films, I would like to in fact remind you a video that is about a video game. So there's actually a really cool sequence break in the game that I assumed was found by a game tester, which makes me wonder what the hell were those game testers doing to do something this complex? Like, I'm going to show you someone that did this because my hands can't perform this shit at all. I ain't got the execution to perform this. But once you do and you go to the Sector 4 navigation room, you get a call from Adam to talk about the sequence break, and then they talk about how they should let Samus in on their plan because how good the trick was. But Adam says no and then go back to the game story, which is really funny. Like, you're a member of a shadow government and you see someone do something so cool and you go, yo, dude, you want to know our Shadow Cabal's secret plans? It's just really funny to picture a man being so impressed that he offers to tell you a secret group's secret plans. Another fun thing I noticed in my playthrough is that in the Sector 1 fan crisis, we had to destroy the X inside the fans from terraforming Sector 1. In the junk surrounding some of the fans, you can see a GameCube embedded into the shell made of junk. I guess the X also just enjoyed playing a few rounds of Melee Kirby Air Ride. And I think that's all I have for secrets, as fusion is mostly used as a method to unlock stuff from Metroid Prime, which I'll go over if I ever do a video on Metroid Prime, but just know, fusion is how you activate the fusion suit skin in that game, and I believe I already talked about this game being built off of Wario Land 4's engine. So Metroid as a series is known to get remakes, especially when it's needed to update a game, while Super Metroid is most likely a game that is coming next in terms of a remake, which I'll withhold on my opinions later because I'm a very fickle creature who prefers to save relevant thoughts for irrelevant videos most of the time. So anyways, I want to envision and discuss what a Metroid Fusion remake would look like, at least to me. So one thing for sure is to ensure that the stuff that was only in the Japanese version is in the definitive edition, which means any mistranslation is corrected, and fixed for a more cohesive story and keep the charms from the old games, such as the secret message from the really hard sequence break. By the way, that is still so cool that they left this in and they're completely aware of the sequence break as devs. As for tones, I would actually rather amp up the creepy factor in the remake, since an average modern Metroid game is rated T usually. I think we can up the ante, make the players shit their pants. And for another, borrow the E.M.M.I zones. Have the SAX be more active. I need this soulless bastard to be on demon time. Stand on business. But unlike the E.M.M.Is, they cannot be eliminated or defeated like Nemesis. At least not yet. Have them strictly be an unstoppable monster. Another idea I had, if this is based on the Samus from Super Metroid, then something they can add in hard mode could be the X-ray visor, so it can scan hiding places to spot Samus and start firing upon her. The reason why I suggest this to be a hard mode thing is this would be some big bullshit that to deal with on an average playthrough. All I'm saying is there's a big reason why in Dread they implemented a cloaking system with how far those robots can scan sometimes. I'd also like for there to be more signs of destruction that the SAX had left behind, but also I'd like to keep the scripted scenes. Some are absolutely necessary, like literally all of them, because they do force the player to adapt in these situations and to think on their feet. But I absolutely wish to see more of this little bastard. I would also like to suggest other changes to bosses from order of appearance. Yakuza, I like for the spider to have more expressive animations and a better explanation as to why you cannot fire at it. Maybe the boss uses webs to restrain Samus before slamming her down, or more interesting attacks in general. This is also something that could be applied to Nightmare Neo Ridley, although I'm a bit hesitant with Nightmare in the remake because I really disliked how they took Nightmare and Other M and removed his creepiness. He was just kind of moving way too erratically compared to how he moved in Fusion. Just keep his creepy factor in is all I'm asking. Now, Neo Ridley, I want to see him move even more like a demon. Another thing I liked about Samus Returns in Dread was the parry clashes, where certain attacks could be deflected and enable Samus to go into offensive sequences, usually riding on her enemy and unloading a lot of missiles on them, or dodging them while unloading missiles. Either or works. But I think the main aspect is I want to absolutely keep its horror sex. Like, this absolutely needs to be preserved in my opinion. And I guess one minor thought is, are the human zombies supposed to be blue, or would they be designed to be more like the Chozo zombies in Metroid Dread? Because they are very similar in the fact that they are both weak, composed of bio-waste sludge, although in Fusion, the zombie researchers are humans combined with an unknown slime creature, according to the manual at least. Oh, and lastly, I really do hope they follow through with the suit being more fleshy and organic. It adds so much to the Fusion design. That is just so good. It's such a great idea. So originally, I intended to keep this video as a short project due to how exhausted I was from covering Legends ZA and its prequel games X and Y. Somehow I outdid myself again and wrote a script that is larger than my last one. What's insane about this is the fact that I did this to a short game, compared to literally 2 versions of an RPG. I am so damn inconsistent, I swear, man. My brain is an enigma even to me. Oh yeah, anyways, where was I? In my final thoughts, yes. My final thoughts on this project and the game in general. Now, I'm going to keep it a buck for you. This game is not scary. It was all part of my attempt to hype it up as, being scary. Like, I just really like this creepy atmosphere. I mostly just wanted to play on that, and I like the serious feeling of dread. And talk about how I felt when I was about 4 to 8 years old. It's like how I hyped up Monster Rock back then in my Spider-Man video, because I'm not afraid to admit this, that when I was younger, I was a big scaredy cat. I used to get scared of Redeads, Chozo Ghost, Monster Rock, and even, understandably, Resident Evil monsters. Like, when I was young, I would just freeze up if there was a scary monster on the screen. With my final encounter with the SAX, I just stood there and it shot me until I died. I think it's so crazy to compare the me of the past to the me of today. Because now I have no problem playing any of these games, because as I got older, I have gotten braver, more confident. I like to think that these video projects I do are not just me about talking about the games I enjoy, but also marking developments in my life and showing how far I've come. While, of course, plotting to get involved in game journalism, like my first ever coverage of a new release. Sadly, I could not also cover Ghost of Yotei and Metroid Prime 4 or the Outer Worlds 2 like I wanted to. But it is what it is. I'll get them eventually. I cannot cover everything quickly. I don't think I could ever cover that many new games in a row without sacrificing quality, but I stand on business when I say I refuse to willingly drop quality unless it's very minor things I can skip out on. Also, you may have noticed the thumbnail, but big ups to this artist I found called Plague Mafia for drawing and helping me design the thumbnail to this video. This thumbnail could not exist without you specifically, and I mean it. It is so hard to find and hire an artist that is well versed in horror themes to provide suitable assets that fit the mood I was going for. So if I were you, dear viewer, you should definitely check out more of their work. While I show you a few samples of my partner's hard work, again, thank you a whole lot, Plague. I love how they went all in when I told them, yeah, make the piece creepy. Bring out the fusion suits, fleshy depictions, because that shit is the bomb. Oh, and also thank you to Sean. I know you're usually in my credits, but your audio work is stellar. It helps me get these videos out way faster compared to how I used to do all of this. And thank you to my proofreaders. You all constantly change around, but you know who you are, and are also always in my credits. And thank you to my beloved viewers. My career in pre-recorded footage has just begun. I am thinking of opening a Ko-Fi or a Patreon to help maintain my video output and help pay the artists I work with. But please only do this if you have disposable income and are doing very well for yourself. I'd rather you, the audience member, take care of yourself firstly. I do have a job. But I would feel awful if an audience member destabilized themselves donating to me. That just made me feel like shit, I'm gonna be honest. But I also hope you guys continue to follow me on my adventures and keep on coming back over and over to see what I do every month. Thank you all for tuning in to my first big project of 2026. This has been in production since October 26th, just to put in perspective of how long it takes to get these projects out. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye, everyone.